Beneath the surface of ancient texts and forgotten folklore lurk creatures so terrifying, history tried to erase them. These aren't your average monsters. They're the ones whispered about in fear, locked away in myths, buried by time, and nearly lost forever. From soul-devouring beasts to gods of darkness and chaos, these horrors were too disturbing for bedtime stories. In this countdown, we dig into the shadows to uncover the top 10 scariest mythical monsters that history tried to bury. Brace yourself, these legends weren't meant to resurface. But tonight we're bringing them back. Let the nightmare begin. The scariest mythical monsters that history tried to bury, top 10. Mythical monsters aren't just stories to thrill or frighten. They are echoes of humanity's oldest fears. For centuries, civilizations have whispered of things that crawl in the dark, prowl the skies, or rise from the underworld. But not all monsters were celebrated in epic poems or heroic legends. Some were too terrifying, too taboo, or too closely tied to ancient horrors. These monsters weren't just forgotten. They were buried, their names and stories scrubbed from memory, surviving only in scattered fragments, old texts, or whispered folk tales. These are the scariest mythical monsters that history tried to bury, and failed. 1. Kamisats, the death bat god of the underworld, Maya. Kamisats, whose name means death bat, was feared among the ancient Maya for good reason. This bloodthirsty creature wasn't just a demon, it was a god of night, sacrifice, and decapitation. In the Popol Vuh, the sacred Kitch Maya text, Kamisats resides in the House of Bats, a nightmarish realm filled with bat-like monsters. He decapitated one of the hero twins in a test of survival, a scene so violent and shocking that later versions softened or omitted it entirely. Archaeological evidence suggests Kamisats may reflect ancient fears of disease, darkness, and death rituals. As Spanish colonizers destroyed Maya codices, much of his myth was lost, deliberately buried by both time and conquest. 2. Achche-Shravas, the demonic horse of the churning ocean, Hindu mythology. Achche-Shravas was no ordinary horse. Born from the cosmic churning of the ocean, Samudra Manthan, it was radiant, seven-headed, and otherworldly. While often portrayed as divine, some obscure texts hint at a darker nature. A steed of apocalypse linked to death gods like Yama or used in sacrifices to dark powers. Some traditions considered it an omen of doom, appearing before massive battles or calamities. Its image was softened over time, but folk stories from rural India hint at a spectral, vengeful horse spirit that tramples entire villages. The original, terrifying form of Achche-Shravas was edited out of mainstream texts. A divine mount rebranded for comfort. 3. Lamia, the child-eating queen of the night, Greek mythology. Once a beautiful queen of Libya, Lamia was cursed by Hera to become a hideous, child-eating monster after Zeus seduced her. Driven mad with grief, she roamed the night, stealing children and drinking their blood. Over centuries, her story fragmented into countless versions, some depicting her as a vampire, others as a serpent-bodied horror. Greek philosophers like Diodorus downplayed Lamia's story, while medieval Christians reframed her as a symbol of demonic temptation. Her monstrous acts were too disturbing for popular retellings, so she faded into shadowy folklore, resurfacing only in horror fiction and occult texts centuries later. 4. Yamata no Orochi, the eight-headed serpent, Japanese mythology. Yamata no Orochi was a colossal eight-headed serpent who demanded human sacrifices. Each year, it devoured a daughter of an elderly couple until only one remained. The storm god Susanoo slayed the beast, but the myth's symbolism is darker than the heroic tale suggests. Some scholars believe Orochi represented natural disasters or tribal genocide, especially the drowning of villages and floods. Over time, the ritualistic violence of Orochi's story, especially its connection to sacrificial daughters, was minimized. Shinto and Buddhist influences softened the tale, and its more horrific elements were lost in retellings meant for children. But in older shrines and scrolls, the monstrous nature of Orochi still lurks. 5. Abea, the vengeful water guardian, Melanesian mythology. In Melanesian folklore, the Abea is a giant, blind eel that dwells in deep, sacred lakes. It considers all creatures in its domain as children, and if any are harmed, Abaya unleashes floods that drown entire villages. Unlike typical evil monsters, Abaya is more like a wrathful god, one whose rage is terrifyingly indiscriminate. Colonial missionaries and anthropologists often left Abaya out of translated tales, perhaps uncomfortable with a monster that punishes humans for disrespecting nature. Its legend persists in oral stories but was never widely written down, intentionally hidden in the folds of forgotten tradition. 6. Tezcatlipoca, the smoking mirror god of terror, Aztec mythology. Tezcatlipoca was no mere trickster. He was a god of night, chaos, and cannibalistic sacrifice. Often appearing as a jaguar or a shadowy figure with an obsidian mirror, he represented destruction, illusion, and the unforgiving side of divinity. Tezcatlipoca demanded human hearts, spread disease, and brought insanity to kings. The Aztecs both feared and revered him, but after the Spanish conquest, his name was smeared and buried. He was demonized, then erased from mainstream records. His temples destroyed and effigies shattered. What remains of him survives in fragments, yet the eerie feeling of being watched in the dark, that's Tezcatlipoca. 7. Adze, the vampire firefly of West Africa, U mythology. The Adze is a vampiric entity that takes the form of a firefly. Once inside a home, it slips through cracks to suck the blood of its sleeping victims. If caught, it transforms into a ghastly humanoid figure, often described as a shriveled corpse or hideous witch. Belief in the Adze is closely tied to accusations of witchcraft, especially against women and children. Because of its connection to taboo practices, colonizers and missionaries suppressed knowledge of the Adze, dismissing it as superstition. But in rural Ghana, Benin, and Togo, fear of this creature remains real, proof that buried myths sometimes survive underfoot. 8. Typhon, the monster of monsters, Greek mythology. Typhon wasn't just a beast. He was the beast, a titan born to destroy the gods. A storm of chaos, with 100 snake heads and eyes full of fire, Typhon challenged Zeus for control of the cosmos. Mountains shattered and seas boiled in their battle. But what's rarely told is how much ancient Greeks feared Typhon. His story was often censored or trimmed in classical education because he embodied too much chaos. Philosophers minimized him, poets rebranded him as metaphor. But to the ancients, Typhon was terror incarnate, a force too dangerous to name without trembling. 9. Joragumo, the woman spider predator, Japanese folklore. Joragumo is a yokai, a supernatural spider that transforms into a beautiful woman to lure men to their doom. She seduces them, then reveals her true form and devours them in her web. The story, originating from Edo period Japan, is both erotic and horrifying. Because of its themes of seduction, betrayal, and cannibalism, the Joragumo tale was censored in later retellings. It became more spiritual or symbolic in kabuki plays. But older versions are pure nightmare fuel, emphasizing her hypnotic power and grotesque transformations. In the mountains of Japan, local legends still warn of women who watch from the trees, spinning webs of death. 10. Ammit, the devourer of the dead, Egyptian mythology. To the ancient Egyptians, death was a judgment. Your heart was weighed against the feather of Ma'at, the goddess of truth. If it was heavy with sin, it wasn't sent to an underworld for punishment. Instead, it was thrown to Ammit. Ammit was part lion, part crocodile, and part hippopotamus, the three most dangerous beasts known to the Nile. She didn't torture. She didn't imprison. She erased. Devouring the heart meant the soul was gone forever. No afterlife, no memory. Just oblivion. Unlike other monsters, Ammit didn't get worship or stories. Egyptians feared even speaking of her. After all, what's more terrifying than total annihilation? Monsters too real to remember. Each of these 10 monsters represents more than just myth. They embody ancient trauma, societal taboos, and raw fears humanity couldn't conquer. Some were buried by invading empires. Others were censored by religious reformers or diluted by centuries of retelling. But their power lingers. They weren't just monsters of the imagination. They were warnings, symbols, and shadows of things too horrifying to face head-on. And though history tried to bury them, the dirt is never deep enough. All it takes is a whisper, a night alone, or a forgotten tale to bring them back into the light. You've just witnessed the darkest nightmares mythology tried to forget, creatures too terrifying to survive the light of history. From soul-stealing demons to godlike horrors, these monsters weren't just legends, they were warnings. If you enjoyed this descent into the shadows, make sure to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you never miss a dive into the unknown. Got a terrifying creature we missed? Drop it in the comments. We're always hunting for the next buried horror. Thanks for watching the scariest mythical monsters that history tried to bury, Top 10. Until next time, beware what history leaves behind. Scylla, based on tentacled creatures. In the vast and turbulent seas of ancient Greek mythology, few creatures strike as much terror into the hearts of sailors as Scylla, the dreaded sea monster lurking in narrow straits, waiting to devour any ship that strayed too close. Often portrayed with a cluster of snapping dogheads and serpentine limbs, Scylla's form is both terrifying and enigmatic. However, beneath the surface of this legendary tale lies a deeper truth. Scylla's monstrous anatomy appears to draw directly from real-world marine life, particularly tentacled and many-limbed sea creatures such as octopuses, squids, and polychaete worms. This essay dives deep into the origins of Scylla, her mythological role, physical descriptions, and the real-world marine animals that may have inspired her form. By examining Scylla through the lens of both mythology and marine biology, we begin to understand how the ancients turned nature's bizarre sea creatures into nightmarish legends. Scylla and myth, the origins of terror. Scylla first emerges in the epic tales of Homer's Odyssey and later in Virgil's Aeneid, where she is portrayed as one half of a deadly maritime hazard along with Charybdis, the whirlpool that lurks opposite her. Together they represent a near-impossible choice: be devoured by a monster or sucked into a watery vortex. In Homer's account, Odysseus is warned by the sorceress Circe to steer his ship closer to Scylla rather than Charybdis. She explains, "Scylla is a creature with 12 feet, all dangling, and 6 necks terribly long, with a grisly head on each, and each head has 3 rows of teeth packed tight and close, full of black death." This horrific anatomy is already beyond human experience. But the use of multiple heads and limbs points to something very familiar in the natural world: tentacled and multi-limbed marine predators. 2. Anatomy of a monster. What did Scylla look like? Descriptions of Scylla vary depending on the author and era. Some accounts depict her as a beautiful woman from the waist up and a monstrous mass of writhing dogs or serpents below. Others portray her entirely as a beast, a hybrid of woman, serpent, dog, and fish. Across all versions, the following features are consistent: 6 long necks, each ending in a snapping dog-like head. Multiple tentacle-like limbs. A torso embedded in a rocky cliff or fused with stone. A taste for human flesh, grabbing sailors from ships with swift strikes. Later artistic and literary interpretations further accentuate her unnatural form. Classical vase paintings often show her lower body covered in serpents or tentacles, resembling a kraken-like shape, a detail that may reflect real fears of deep-sea creatures with numerous limbs. 3. Tentacled nightmares, the real creatures behind the legend. So what might have inspired such a monstrous vision? It's unlikely that ancient Greeks had direct encounters with enormous sea monsters, but they certainly had sailors' tales, coastal observations, and possibly glimpses of washed-up marine animals. Let's look at several sea creatures whose biology could have contributed to the Scylla myth. 1. Octopuses. The octopus is perhaps the most visually similar to many depictions of Scylla. With its 8 arms, shape-shifting abilities, and intelligence, the octopus would have been a mysterious creature to ancient people. They move with alien grace, squeeze through impossible spaces, and attack prey with terrifying speed. In shallow Mediterranean waters, several species of octopus exist and were likely seen by coastal fishers. Their tentacles, studded with suction cups, may have been exaggerated into snake or dog-headed appendages in myth. In some versions, Scylla's tentacles emerge suddenly from her stone lair, just like an octopus darting from its den. 2. Giant squid. The giant squid, Architeuthis, is another likely inspiration. While extremely rare, these elusive creatures occasionally washed ashore or became tangled in fishing nets. With tentacles that can exceed 30 feet, a huge beak and massive eyes, the giant squid was a real-life monster from the deep. The squid's tentacles grab prey and pull it toward its central mouth, a process that may have inspired the idea of Scylla's multiple necks snatching sailors from ships. To the ancient Greeks, such a sight, if ever seen, would have appeared nothing short of supernatural. 3. Marine polychaete worms, bristle worms. Far less known to the public but incredibly strange are the polychaete worms, particularly the bobbit worm, Unus aphroditus. This creature buries itself in sand with only its jaws visible, and strikes at prey with terrifying speed. Some can reach lengths over 10 feet, and their rapid ambush style fits perfectly with the strike from below nature of Scylla. The myth describes Scylla attacking from the sides of a cliff, hidden until the last moment. This ambush behavior aligns closely with the real hunting method of the bobbit worm and other benthic predators, especially in rocky or coral environments. 4. Symbolism. Scylla as a metaphor for natural fear. Beyond her anatomical roots, Scylla represents a symbolic embodiment of fear, uncertainty, and the dangers of the sea. Ancient sailors lacked the science we have today. To them, the ocean was a realm of unpredictable monsters and gods. Scylla was not merely a beast, she was a guardian of thresholds, a liminal creature haunting a narrow strait, believed to be the Strait of Messina between Italy and Sicily. Her role was partly functional, to give narrative form to the impossible decisions and double binds that sailors often faced. The term between Scylla and Charybdis entered language as an idiom meaning to choose between two evils. This metaphorical power may have ensured Scylla's survival in literature and storytelling far beyond her physical myth. V. Scylla's transformation, from maiden to monster. Interestingly, not all stories agree that Scylla was always a monster. Later myths, especially in Ovid's Metamorphoses, tell of Scylla as a beautiful sea nymph who was transformed into a monster by the jealous witch Circe. This tragic origin adds a layer of complexity to Scylla's tale. Scylla was loved by the sea god Glaucus, who sought help from Circe to win her affection. Circe, herself in love with Glaucus, poisoned the waters where Scylla bathed. As a result, Scylla's lower body mutated into writhing dogs or serpents, making her a monster feared by all. This transformation trope, a beautiful woman turned into a horrific monster, echoes throughout myth, but it may also reflect how natural forms, like tentacled sea life, were reimagined through a lens of fear and morality. 6. Scylla in art and literature. Scylla has remained a popular figure throughout centuries of art and literature. From Renaissance paintings to Baroque sculptures, and even into modern video games and fantasy films, Scylla is consistently shown as a hybrid of human and beast, surrounded by twisting appendages. Artists often emphasize her dual nature, the upper half often human and seductive, the lower half monstrous and alien. This reflects the idea that the surface of the sea may seem calm and inviting, but hides a deadly, tentacled reality beneath. In literature, Scylla remains a popular metaphor for inescapable dangers, often cited in politics, philosophy, and even space exploration. Her image as a tentacled horror has proven flexible across genres, whether as a sea witch, demoness, or Lovecraftian horror. 7. Scylla in modern science fiction and horror. Modern depictions of tentacled horrors, from H.P. Lovecraft's Cthulhu to Kaiju and Pacific Rim, owe much to the groundwork laid by myths like Scylla. The image of a multi-limbed beast rising from the sea to destroy ships taps into a deep evolutionary fear of drowning, predation, and the unknown depths. Scylla may be one of the first examples of a tentacle monster, a concept that thrives in contemporary horror and sci-fi. Her multiple heads, unpredictable strikes, and liminal position between sea and stone make her the prototype of every giant sea monster that followed. Scylla born from the deep. Scylla's legend is more than just a story, it is a cultural fossil, preserving ancient fears of the sea, the unknown, and the grotesque forms hidden beneath the waves. Through her we see how real creatures, octopuses, squids, polychaete worms, were transformed in the minds of ancient sailors into monsters of myth. Scylla reminds us that many mythical creatures are exaggerated interpretations of real animals, filtered through imagination, fear, and limited understanding. Her snapping dogheads may have begun as squid tentacles, her ambush attacks may have mimicked the sudden strike of a bobbit worm. And yet, the terror she inspired is no less real. Even today, when we descend into the blackness of the deep ocean, we are reminded of creatures with limbs and maws not unlike hers, waiting, hidden, silent. Thanks for diving into the depths with us. As we've seen, the line between myth and reality is often thinner than we think. From sea serpents to monstrous squid, these legendary creatures may have roots in real encounters that left ancient sailors both terrified and awestruck. If you enjoyed this journey through history, science, and myth, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you never miss an episode. Got a favorite sea monster or theory? Drop it in the comments below. We'd love to hear your thoughts. Until next time, stay curious and beware what lurks beneath.